Firms in emerging markets typically suffer from voids in market-based institutions. In other words, from the absence of an institutional infrastructure that would facilitate their business transactions. For example, access to capital and labor markets, or to legal frameworks like intellectual property law. Prior theory in strategic management broadly suggests two possible ways that firms can address these voids. The first is to develop an institutional infrastructure that mainly benefits the focal firm. Examples include leveraging relational rents, making internal investments in private infrastructure, or engaging with key stakeholders on an instrumental basis. A second approach is to join public or nonprofit initiatives to build or improve existing institutional infrastructure for the benefit of a broader set of participants who share access to it. Non-corporate actors typically take the lead in such initiatives, since they have greater legitimacy than firms do to act in the public sphere. As a result, they're often better placed to bridge the differences between the corporate and nonprofit sectors. This study was inspired by our discovery of a firm that did not seem to have followed either of these two paths, and yet has successfully overcome substantial voids in market-based institutions. Between 1990 and 2010, Brazilian cosmetics firm Natura worked with two population groups that were marginalized from traditional labor and capital markets. The first was located downstream in its supply chain. Natura distributed its products through a direct sales network made up of women with limited access to education or capital and few professional alternatives. The second population group was located upstream in its supply chain. Natura sought to ecologically source ingredients and knowledge about those ingredients' properties from traditional communities within Brazilian biomes. These are naturally occurring flora in areas such as the Amazon rainforest. The company has been widely applauded for social and ecological initiatives that, although key to its business success, have not benefited Natura alone or even first. Natura has also been recognized for taking the initiative in forming cross-sector partnerships with public and nonprofit actors and with local communities to implement those initiatives. We collected in-depth qualitative data from archives and interviews, which we then analyzed using a pattern matching technique. The objective of pattern matching is to help researchers re-examine implicit mental models and shared assumptions by rendering them explicit and contrasting them with the data. This technique led us to contrast the first two extant approaches to addressing voids in market-based institutions with Natura's along 8 dimensions. These dimensions correspond to Elinor Ostrom's design principles for managing commonly held resources, such as institutional infrastructure, through polycentric governance. According to this, multiple independent actors must determine a general system of rules under which to mutually order their relationships with one another. These 8 dimensions help us uncover different patterns across the 3 approaches in terms of 3 sets of questions. Who gets access to what resources? How the rules governing those resources are formed, and by what means those rules are enforced. Our analysis leads us to conceptualize Natura's forming of cross-sector partnerships to address voids in market-based institutions as a novel approach that we refer to as building an open institutional infrastructure. This characterization can be embodied in the following pattern. A firm will address voids in market-based institutions by building an open institutional infrastructure. This OII is accessible to a broad range of participants beyond the firm's exchange partners. It is governed by a set of rules that are jointly defined within multilateral, cross-sector partnerships established by the firm, and it is protected by relational norms aligning public and private value creation. We think this pattern points to exciting ways whereby strategic management research can generate novel insights into new forms of organizing, ones in which the company plays a more central role, although maybe a less visible one, in fostering cross-sector collaborations to redesign institutions.